All right. Welcome everyone to our Figma to Code live stream. I'm Josh Thomas, product manager of AI services here at Builder, and I'm joined by Andreas, who is a customer engineer at Builder. And today we're excited to talk to you about how to transform your designs to code.
Yeah, and if you ever struggled with the handoff between the design team and the development team, this demo is for you. I know in a former life as a front-end dev, I've definitely experienced this where the design team comes up with a design and then the developers have to manually, fix every pixel to make it pixel perfect, center every div, and it can be a frustrating process translating that. So we're trying to solve that problem.
Definitely. Let's talk more about it. So in the agenda, first, we're going to do a quick intro, talk through kind of a precursor to what the lab is going to be about. We're going to do a step-by-step walkthrough, which will be the lab. I hope that you're able to stick around until the end because we're going to do a Q&A. And if you have questions as we're talking and going through this process, there's a little Q&A button at the bottom of the webinar in Zoom that you can click and add your questions to. Please do that instead of adding them to chat, because in chat we can lose track of them. And if you put them in the Q&A, then they're there whenever we get to that point in the webinar. So some common use cases and actually some webinars we've had in the past. These are common use cases for using the develop product, building external facing applications. I said develop product, develop or publish. It's really Figma-to-code. Let me correct that. Building external facing applications, building internal portals and dashboards, and maximizing adherence to an existing design system. And that's what we're going to cover today.
So let's briefly talk about the traditional workflow challenge that we're trying to create a solution for here. So designers will create these beautiful mock-ups in Figma, and then developers have to manually recreate everything in code. So this can be really time-consuming. It can be prone to inconsistencies and miscommunications, and it can often result in designs that don't match the original vision. And also, in addition, it's just like a big workload for developers to be doing when they may be like rather focusing on things like connecting APIs or creating like a custom checkout page in an e-commerce setting. So we want to be able to have the developers focus on the more interesting tasks and leave this. It's almost like manual labor, like recreating these designs. So we want to come up with a solution to that. And what we have come up with as a solution is our Figma-to-code plugin. So basically we have a plugin in Figma that can import all of your designs into our visual CMS, our visual design platform. And basically, this is about not just importing things and having generic HTML components, which we certainly can do, and it's a great solution if you're just like creating a quick landing page and you don't necessarily need to match into your design system. Sure. But with the enterprise plan, you can actually use your own components and your own design system and have that import be mapped directly to components coming from your code. For example, today we're going to be using Material UI or MUI. But the same principles can really apply to any component library, including like your own custom components that you have created in your code, be it React, Vue, Angular, whatever platform you like to use, whatever framework.
Yeah. And then for today's demo, what we're going to accomplish is I'm going to talk through our landing page asset and the Figma libraries themselves, what they are, how they work, how they fit into this flow. Andreas is then going to talk about how to import the design from Figma into Builder's visual editor. He's then going to take that visual editor and make additional adjustments or refinements to it. And then he's going to show the imported design interactions with our code base and how that integrates into an existing web app. I'm going to come back around toward the end of it and talk about how this process allows us to maintain design consistency and proper adherence to what Material UI provides to us. By the end, we're hoping that you're going to be able to reduce what it takes from days to minutes, all while maintaining design fidelity and code quality. All right, let's get started with the lab. Okay, here we're looking at a design that was provided to us. And this is a landing page for a fictitious product. And we didn't design this because neither of us are designers, but this looks like a SaaS product to me. And this was built using a component library that is from Material UI. Not all of this is using material components, but pieces of it are. And let's talk about what some of those pieces are and how they relate to a Figma library. So we can drill in on this Figma design and see that this is using a component, which an instance of a component, because we can see a little diamond here next to the item in the hierarchy. But then we also, as we have it selected, we can see additional information about it. We can see that this is using a button from the Material UI for Figma library. And I actually have that open here on another tab so that we can look at it a little bit further. We can see that here's a lot of instances of buttons in this component set. And not only is this using a button, but it's also using for the inputs. It's using design for the cards that we have further down in the page, the paper within the cards. And you'll see in a second, all of the components that are available to us as we go through and actually convert this in a mapping. So one of the nice things is that when you're looking at Figma libraries like this, a developer who's going to come in and make this transition and take the code from, or the design from Figma and convert it into code, and most likely in this case, React code, because React and Next.js are kind of the popular approach right now. But you can look at this as a developer and understand, based on this component being used, I know the code in my library that is going to make use of. And I can look at the props here and understand in my mind, I visualize that and see what is the code that results from this. And I can do that because I have a strong understanding of my own code base and the documentation that is available here from Figma. It's not always the case for everyone, and we're actually going to show why it may not be as important moving forward to have that documentation available to developers. So now Andreas is going to jump in and actually take this design and convert it from Figma into Builder.
Yeah, let me just share. Cool. So I'm going to go here into Figma. I'm going to select this entire landing page. And I'm going to open up our Figma plugin, which I believe there's a link to in the chat. But this is our Figma plugin. If we look here in design system, I have all of these components that are being used in the selection that are being mapped. And Josh will show this a little later on, exactly some of the nitty gritty about this. But for now, I'm just going to hit export design and we're going to start exporting it. And now while that happens, I will share here in my code base, I have a theme set up for Material UI. I have a basic builder integration, which is basically saying like, hey, call some content from Builder's content API and then render it using our SDK. So just kind of like a basic integration of our visual CMS. Then in this file builder registry, I am importing all the components that I want to use from Material UI. And I'm basically passing them into this function that registers them with Builder, so that what it basically does is augments our visual editor so that you can have like not just drag and drop of like some basic HTML components, but also you have your Material UI components available for drag and drop. And that's just one of the basic features of our CMS. But what's interesting about it is now, because those are registered with Builder, and because we've mapped them with some mapping functions that basically tell our Figma plugin, like this variable in Figma should be passed into this prop in React. Because we've done that, we're actually going to be able to copy this entire design from Figma, paste it in. And again, there we go, paste it in. And now we pretty much have the same page that we had here. I mean, it looks pretty good right off the bat. And you can see, watch this. If
I
I
think it
drag,
looks great.
I think it looks really good. If I drag in some text, okay, so I'm able to sort of just like, we have a drag and drop WYSIWYG editor is all I'm trying to kind of show here. I can drag in some elements and edit them. And these are basically just going to be like kind of, they're just HTML elements. There's not anything special about them, but this one here, if you look in this layers tab, you can see this React component logo. Like this is actually rendering a component from your code base, which is awesome. And one interesting thing here is like this elevation 1 is actually, if you select this card here, the same component, you'll see the elevation is set to 1 here. So that's not a coincidence that they're both 1. This one, actually, I can change it now. It's like, let's change it to 5, and you'll notice that I think it just adds like a little shadow or something. And that's directly mapping. You see it added a little shadow right there. That directly maps to the props of your React component. So we've exposed those props here. And we've also understood that like there were certain props that were set in Figma, and we've imported them directly into the rendering or instance of that component as well in Builder, rendering exactly from our code. And I think, Josh, you had something more you wanted to show about the props, right, in Figma? Can I toss it over to you?
Yeah, go ahead and share my screen.
Should I stop sharing, or you just want to?
I
There you
got
go.
it.
Got it. Perfect.
Yeah, and I think that as we look at these components, and I believe that you actually touched on one specifically, which was the card. And let's take a look at actually how this works. So I'm going to go and bring up the Builder plugin. And I got to tell you, I'm excited to show this because this is a feature that I'm going to be showing that we just released last week. And documentation should be available on it on the site tomorrow, I believe. But if we go to the design system tab, we can see that based on this item being selected, this component, we see that contains card content and card media. So if we choose card content, and let's go to what's called the debug view. Now, what this actually does is allow me to show the content. This is the mapper code, and this is how we take what comes from Figma into React code, specifically when we're mapping components. So the Material UI component, which is card media, the Figma component for that comes into this function, and this function reads that information and then ends up at the end returning what that would look like if it were JSX. So on the right, we can see what the results of that would be.
Yeah, I think this one just has like Figma.ratio. Like it's a kind of a simpler one. It just needs to grab.
Yeah, let's
ratio,
actually look at the
calculation.
button. I think the button could be a good one here.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we go. So Material UI button, we can see what the mapper code looks like and then what the resulting React code. We also have Angular and Vue. But we see that the color on this button is primary, the size is medium, and the variant is contained. And that's interesting because that's the naming convention and the approach that is expected by the documentation for the Material UI React components. But from the perspective of how it's set up within Figma, thanks, Andreas.
I love drawing. I'm sorry.
We can see how it's actually set up in Figma. So if the size is medium, the size in the component is medium as well. And I'm showing you an example of Material's really good at this because Material UI is actually first-class React and Figma was an afterthought, right? It was code first, but that's not necessarily what you're going to have in your design system. So there will be instances where your design system might be even more different than what the corresponding code looks like. There could be multiple components that equate to a single component within your design system. And because we're using this mapping function, it gives you a lot of that potential and possibility of understanding how Figma designs end up looking like when they go to code. And I think that here we can change the variant, and we switch back. We can actually see that based on the code, it reran the props again and changed the size on the resulting code of the button. Sorry, I just like showing this because I think it's fun, and I think it's really interesting to talk about. And Andreas, do you have anything else that you want to cover in this Figma design or about
Yeah.
like the theme?
Yeah. I just wanted to say, like, so you see that Figma object on the left, or the variable, like these. So first of all, like, this all kind of lives in the code, and I'll show in a second. Like, you can basically have these mappings live in your code and then migrate them, or like publish them rather, to your Figma plugin or your builder space, and then update this accordingly. But if you even wanted, you can add a console log of that Figma objects, and then in your console, you can actually see every single like variable, every single property of that Figma object. And I find that's very helpful in tweaking these functions and making sure you get the best results you can get. Yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to add on this part. I got some other stuff in the builder platform and in the code I could share though.
All right, go for it.
Cool. I will replace share. Cool. So one thing I just wanted to call out is that you see these buttons right now are these the dark color here. And that's because basically I wanted them to match what we had in our design. But the good thing about it is, because these buttons are not like just a generic button, they are actually the Material UI button. We can go to theme, and right now you can see the theme I have set. It's like white, black, like dark gray, kind of straightforward, right? But I just so happen to have another theme here. So if I save that in my code base, reload this, you can see that the colors change to light blue, and you got like a whole different theme going on here. So it really shows that this is directly affected by the Material UI theme that you have going on in your code. I guess I should probably comment out this comment. There we go. Cool. And in general, then, if there's something that's like not quite right, you can go into our visual editor here and tweak that. Like, maybe, I don't know if I have design tokens on the space. Let's see. Let's, change the font size. That looks a little better. You can make little changes, and you can see that these will be stored basically as images. You can swap them out. You can even put SVGs in there, whatever you need to do. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot you can do with this. So when I'm done with that, I'm able to just, you could just publish it to Purcell. In this case, I'm just running it locally. So we'll see, okay, this is what will be served on our site. And we pretty much made a landing page in like 5 minutes. So that's really exciting. And hopefully it cuts down a lot of the development time. So you can have the developers focus on more interesting projects, or more valuable projects as well. I think that's just about all I've got right now. Josh, what, you were going to add something?
Yeah, I was going to add that I think it's really interesting that you were able to show how the theme changed. And I think that's important, because normally when you're going from Figma to code, what happens is that it's actually just like recreating it, and it's not using tokens and it's not using themes. It's just like recreating based off of what its understanding of the code was. But what we're able to show here is, because it's coming across as a mapped component, and we're able to just make that one theme change, and we're seeing it on a page, but obviously that would be affected across an entire property, right? Any button on the entire site that's using that theme would then be, reflected in the updates. And we're showing the code here as it's done within our content management system within Publish, but you can also export this code as well using the develop product. So the same idea comes across. You can do the mappings, and when you export the code, the components are mapped as well.
Yeah, and it'll be using your actual, it'll generate code for everything that you haven't mapped, and it'll use the components from your code base for the ones that you have mapped, which is very fun.
All right. So some of the outcomes we've had, we'll probably jump into a lot of Q&A. I hope there's a lot waiting for me right now, but we imported our Material UI based landing page from Figma to Builder. we learned how component mapping can help us leverage our existing design system. And we created a landing page using that design system with the components that are available from it as well. And most of all, we save time. All right, let's do some Q&A.
Cool. So we
You
have
want to bring up and look at the questions? I hope everybody has their questions in.
cool. Looks like we have some good questions here. Yeah, and please drop them in the Q&A if you still have to ask your question. Drop it in the Q&A and then we'll see it. Okay. Which question do we want to do, Josh? What
I'm
about
looking.
what about responsiveness was one that I saw. Yeah, I mean, our AI tries to keep things as responsive as it can when it imports it. Let's see here if I can share real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
If you see here, like we have the option to view in like tablet, desktop, tablet, mobile. And this was created just from the desktop design. And then it tries to make the most responsive version for tablet and mobile just from importing one of the designs. If you need to change that design, you can either like have a whole different version of the page targeted towards mobile, or you can just on tablet make some style changes that will only be applied to tablet, and then on mobile you can make some style changes that will only be applied to mobile. That's part of our platform and what our CMS can do from the jump. So the import just kind of plays right into that. So yeah, that's how we handle responsiveness with these imports.
All right, so we've got a few questions here. I'm going to answer this one live. The design system mapping must be done manually, one by one, right? It is one by one. It is not manual. There is a process that we have that looks at your code through our CLI and looks at the Figma design and actually creates those mappings for you. So we use an LLM along with our extra understanding in order to generate those mappings. You will need to maintain those in your code base, but the first go of it is created by our AI.
Yeah, and then you can make small changes. That's where I was talking about console logging the Figma object. If there's something more complex you want to do, or if you saw the AI do it one way and you're like, well, I kind of want it this way, you have that freedom still. You have that ability to infuse some humanity into it. But we do love starting with what the LLM generates because it saved us a lot of time, which is kind of the idea with all of this.
Yeah. So another question, how do we pass our design system? And I think that if you have your design system set up as a library within Figma, you have half the puzzle solved already. And the other half is creating the mappings based off of the code that you have that is the equivalent to that design system. Now, I'm guessing that most of you who have a design system or library in Figma, you also have code equivalent of that. And that process is where the mapping takes place. And then in the end result, when it's brought into Builder or eventually even transition to code, that's how we have insights into your design system.
So one question from anonymous attendee is this builder view a local preview? And the answer is yes. Basically what's happening is it's rendering your local host inside of an iframe inside of our visual editor. But you can also have like a live site, basically. Live site, staging site, whatever you want to use as your preview URL, we can render that inside that iframe. And then you can preview your site there. And I saw another one around there, but I missed it now. Maybe John
did go fast. Thanks for the comment on that. Can we show the mapping process? I think that we could go back and show maybe the debugger and what that looks like in code.
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to share what I have in my code?
Yeah, if you want
Sure.
to. I can answer another question while you do prep for it, unless you're already.
I don't need to prep. It's right here. So basically there's like and actually Josh, if you can drop the docs on the CLI with the Figma CLI, but basically there's like a terminal command that you can write, and I think it pops up when you do the export. where you can basically, or I guess it pops up in the design tab, the design system tab of our Figma plugin.
Yeah, you want to actually, let's show
you
that.
show
Go to
that?
the
Yeah,
Figma.
sure.
Yeah. Let's
So-
choose the button. Yep.
Then
and
open our Figma plugin, design system. And I think like basically this is already mapped, but if it wasn't to be mapped, then there would be a command here that says like, hey, like map this component. And then you run a command in your terminal and it generates, you know, for whatever components you have registered and whatever components you had selected in Figma, it'll generate one of these mappings. And you can see like, it tries to say like, okay, so there's the color prop that can take this enum. And this is like coming right from the button from Material UI. And then it creates this mapping that basically is just, what it's trying to do is like render icon button the same way it would in React and pass in the props, but it's taking these props mostly from like the Figma objects, which lives in Figma. And you can add all sorts of stuff to this, like a console log, as I mentioned earlier. And then you run, once you're done and you have it mapped the way that you want it mapped, you run a command that publishes all of these mappings to Figma, or really to your builder space that uses this Figma plugin. And basically, this is a good way to maintain these in your code base because we always love having our code live in one place. But then with this design system aspect of it here, that's, let's see, open the debug. That's when we're able to kind of see, here's the left view, here's the right view. So this is like a kind of a helper tool in a way, and ways to keep track of it when you're in the Figma plugin, you have like visibility into it. But as developers, most of us like to keep our code managed in our code base and you know, under version control, et cetera, et cetera. So we let the code live here and then visualize here as well. Anything you wanted to add on that front, Josh, with the
Well, Zachary had a good comment here. It would be good to
yeah.
have the ability to delete so that you could regenerate.
Yeah.
The current approach we have is that whenever you do a publish, if you exclude that file, if you delete the file, you can publish and it will remove it. So yeah, we'll go ahead and show that now.
What is it? Is this the command we're looking for?
Yep.
Saw this.
And then actually, you know what? Let's regenerate. Let's generate that and see how it does for the button.
Sure. I know we're about to hit time, but
Oh, you misnamed it.
I did. Wait, which one? Sorry.
It's FGIMA. It's FIGMA.
I just made up a new command. Yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah, and that's a good comment, Andre, is that they seem like a lot of work, but hopefully whenever we show you this, where we're actually mapping the component, you'll realize that there's a lot of work that is created based on the AI. Yeah, go ahead and publish. All right. Well, we still see it.
Yeah, I think it's very possible like that this might be like linked to another space or something.
Oh, that could
I'm
be.
not sure. I
All
thought
right.
I linked it to that one, but that's all right.
It's okay.
If you got a fast example, we could share, but I think we're kind of at time anyways. But essentially, the way it works is you delete one of the mappings from your code base and then publish. I think I think they were originally generated from your code base, Josh, and I have like a fork of it or something like that. But anyways, like, yeah, that's how you can remove one of them, and then you can regenerate it. When there's not any mappings published, then you get like kind of a prompt to generate them the first time. And that's where all these came from, with some mild tweaking, but mostly right from what the AI created for us.
Yeah, before we end, I don't want to end yet. I think we were shooting for 30. I think we can go a little bit over it.
It's fine with me.
Joe, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's probably fine. As long as we're getting good questions and I think that people, yeah, go. All right.
We're just having too much fun, so we'll keep going.
I said go, so we're good. I'd like to talk more about this considering the questions. I think that, you know, if you're asking a question right now, you're not the only one who has that question. So I'd like to answer it for more than just you.
Oh, we have a really good question here. To have a responsive design, should Figma have auto layout? And my answer is absolutely yes. We have a best practices. I'm not sure if it was already in the chat, but we can definitely drop it in there again. But we have a best practices doc, and like pretty much like the top of the list of the best practices is use auto layout. And that's the biggest one. There's some other ones like explicitly define images, minimize overlapping and intersections. You know, there's some designs to follow, but essentially, yeah, use auto layout well, and you'll get better imports like every time. That's the biggest thing you can do. We also do have an easy mode that sort of tries to say like, hey, if you're not using auto layout, we'll try to enforce it for you. And it works really well. But right now, use it if you're doing component mapping, you're going to have to do auto layout, and that's going to be really important. So just want to call that out for the developers. Have them read this doc before they make the Figma. Yeah, have them make this doc, read that doc. I think it's the last one I dropped. The Figma auto layout. Looks like Josh has another one as well. But yeah, delete.
Yeah. So these are our docs on mapping components, which is what we covered quite a bit here. The Figma I'll show in a second. Someone had asked for this link. I posted it
Gotcha.
in chat. But here we cover everything that you need to know on how to approach this and how to create the mapping functions. And I believe we actually cover this. Yeah. So this is how you publish, and it actually has a video in here showing you how to go through the process of mapping a component. So hopefully that will be able to answer a lot of the questions you would have about this process. So please refer to the docs. We put quite a bit of time in those in order to answer everyone's questions. And then you were talking about Figma best practices, right?
Yes, it's actually in the chat. Oh yeah, there you go. Precise mode configuration. That's it too. Yeah, I was just calling attention to this. I kind of already covered it, but essentially it's just use auto layout. There's a few other things, export images strictly or explicitly rather. And yeah, I forgot there's newest suggest auto layout feature. That's pretty cool. So if you need to convert a design that didn't use auto layout, you can try using that feature from Figma.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions was, how do we know how a component maps? And there's actually a unique identifier that Figma provides for a library component. And that unique identifier is what we use in order to understand how to map components. It's not based on name. It's actually based on a unique value.
There is an interesting one. What is the AI doing here? It seems to me to be a straightforward conversion code. Maybe I'm understanding it wrong. And
It
Josh
depends.
probably answer it more concisely as the head of the AI product. But essentially, I mean, like it's taking what's in Figma, but then it's also trying to like look at. And my understanding is it's trained on front end designs. It knows what front end designers want and what they do in Builder and how to take it from just sort of like an image, or not an image, but like a design that's sort of like laid out for the web, but into something that actually works for the web and uses React, uses underlying JSX. But Josh can probably speak to it better.
Yeah, I think that it seems like a straightforward process. And maybe for your components, it is a straightforward process. Like for a button, yeah, that's pretty straightforward, right? It's easy to understand how variant and size information come through. But I have a more complex example in here that I actually did, which was a table. Now, if you've ever worked with tables in Figma before, you know that a table in Figma is not a table structure in HTML or within React or any other code. There's actually quite a bit of information that needs to be known about table. There's the table view, there's table columns, table rows, and then how they're set up in Figma is different. So this was actually generated for me by the AI, and understanding based off of the design in Figma, what that needs to look like whenever it creates the resulting React code. And this is the example I like to show when we talk about why you would want to use AI in this process. I mean, you could go through and write this yourself, but you probably have better things to do with your time.
And someone asked if there's a good GitHub example, and I would show. This is not the same one we use. I'll drop this in the chat, but this is like a really great, just as far as like, not even for just this feature, but for our entire like publish as we call it, CMS product. This is a great example of like kind of like everything that it can do, or a lot of things it can do. And it has like a bunch of, this is public facing, and it has like a lot of different plugins integrated. But when I go to source mappings, you'll see like, here's some of the mappings that are generated. Someone asked for examples of like where we can see like the generated mappings. And here's some pretty straightforward ones that exists publicly. And this has a huge component, not huge, but it has a component library, and you can see a very sophisticated way that all of these components are registered. And it kind of gives you like a good guide to how to make things available in this side panel very efficiently. Boom, boom. What else we got?
Through the questions.
Okay. At my company, wait, I picked one by Joshua Cardos. Is that the same one? Maybe?
No, it's actually a different one.
So many.
Go ahead. You answer that one. I'll answer this one, and we'll call it. How's that?
Sounds good. At my company, we built a component library in-house on top of MUI. Would we be able to use Builder to build this component library? More than just a landing page, we need dozens of components. I would say yes is the answer. And I would also say that like maybe it might even work better. So basically, like if you're using your own component library and you've integrated with Builder, or you're integrating with Builder, and you're like that, you're basically going to be I don't know if I want to say modifying, but like exposing the props of these components in a very Builder friendly way already, because you're building an integration with Builder in a way to let your content editors just drag and drop your own components with some simple options that can feed into your props. That's already something that you're going to be doing if you're using your own component library with Builder. It's pretty standard, and we introduce how to do it in onboarding. It's very straightforward. Once you're integrated with Builder, the next step is to do these component mappings from Figma, so that the Figma designers can have the same options feeding into Builder, which then feed into your props. And honestly, like this is a very common use case, and this will probably work even better than the Material UI example, because you're basically making it native to Builder right off the bat from your integration. So hopefully that answers the question, Josh, Cardos. And Josh Thomas, you had another one you can answer, right?
Yeah, one last question. There was a question about what happens when you bring this over and the design changes. And this is actually something we've talked about because this is a common occurrence, right? You think the design is done, you show it to a stakeholder, it needs to change. It's not uncommon. But the approach typically is that we showed you how to convert an entire design, but we didn't show you is that you can actually piecemeal that. You can choose pieces of the page to convert. If you're doing like an entire overhaul of the page, you might as well just re-import it. But if it's isolated to some specific pieces, what you can do is go in, convert those specific pieces by having them selected, and then copy them and paste them over the top of the content in Builder, and it'll work the same way.
Oh, I got one more I want to answer, which is does the mapping automation only handle one Figma library file as a parity in the code base, or can it handle multiple libraries? It can handle multiple. It can handle, like, it doesn't just which library it comes from is not as important as do you have that component exporting or importing in your code base? Is it registered with Builder? If yes, and is it in Figma? If yes, you can do a component mapping with it with multiple libraries. It's not important the library. We're just using MUI as an example because it's so common.
Yep. And we assume that some of you probably have design systems or component libraries built off of MUI. It's also not uncommon for that to occur. But I think that's it. Let's wrap it up. But I appreciate everyone joining today, and thank you so much.